Hey everyone, I'm EJ Bantz. I'm a Salesforce consultant. I own a consulting practice and I'm also a Salesforce partner. And tonight I thought I would just try to answer some questions, maybe do some more Trailhead learning, um, and kind of just share what's going on. So today was the Milwaukee user group meeting for admins. And we went over like the release notes for spring 20 release, and they shared with the group just some of the key highlights, things to look for. So I found it very useful. If you're looking at getting into Salesforce, I would definitely say make sure that you're attending these user group meetings. They're an excellent place to network with people. Like, for example, in this meeting, there were two companies that kind of announced, hey, we're looking to hire an admin. So one of the companies is Delta Defense. Sorry, they're located in West Bend, Wisconsin. They're looking for more developers, actually. And the other one, I don't know the name of the company, but Brian mentioned that it was in Madison. So it's a Madison company that's, I think, currently using consultants and wants to hire their own administrator. So I don't know any of the requirements for either of those positions, but if that's something that you're interested in, uh, if you let me know, I can help connect you with those people. Um, For Delta Defense, you can probably just go to their website and apply. But for the other one, Brian Kwong was the person that had mentioned it. If you don't know him already, I can introduce you and just kind of hand you off. Um, yeah, so that was that meeting. So yeah, days like today get kind of busy. So I'm working on a long-term project. So I'm billing like 40 hours a week on that project. So on days like this, I get up early, work usually from home or from coffee shops. And then so today I had to travel down to downtown Milwaukee, which is, I don't know, less than an hour away, attend that meeting, and then work more from the lobby area inside that building, and then come all the way back home. And today's a bit exhausting. I'm somewhat of an introvert, so anytime that I attend all these public things where I have to talk to people, I find it a bit draining. Uh, so let's see what else. I think we had some comments come in for questions. Let me bring that up. I remember there are some questions that came in from Manning. So Manning, thank you for sending that. On the last live stream, I was working on some super badges, and I ended up completing that over the weekend. So I finished that super badge and then a second one. So I finished, there were like a total of 3 that you had to finish to get like the the admin superset. So I've completed that now. Okay, maybe I can just drag this over here. These are all public anyway, right? I'd love to see a video of your work setup, computer configuration, how many screens you use and why this is helpful. I believe that it'll be helpful for someone who's just getting into Salesforce. So for this one, I work a lot from coffee shops and hospitals and things like that. So I'm usually just carrying around my MacBook. It's a MacBook Air. And I also have an external monitor that I plug into it. And I can probably show you which monitor that is. This is a one that just plugs into, yeah, maybe I should just go grab it. Let me just grab it real quick. Okay, so I carry my Salesforce bag around everywhere I go, and it's got all my essentials in here. So this is the monitor that I use, and it kind of folds out like this. I'm not doing it right. It goes like that. And then it's just got a USB-C connector that plugs into the laptop, so it doesn't require any sort of like additional power supply or anything like that, so it's very portable. It has its own battery built into it, so it doesn't necessarily drain the battery from the laptop. And then in addition to that, I carry a, so it's a RAV power that has a USB-C connector and then two USB ports. This is just a micro for charging. But this thing has 26,000 milliamps and is almost able to give my laptop a full recharge with the USB-C connector. So this one's pretty good for on the go. And then I can also keep my cell phone charged up for hotspot. But most days I will see my daughter off to the bus stop and then head over to Panera, where I'll work for a few hours, and then go to maybe the library or to a hotel lobby or hospital and kind of work from there. I don't really like to work from home that much. Right now in Wisconsin, it's pretty cold, so I haven't been getting out quite as much. But yeah, so that's my typical work setup is just the two laptops. At home here, I have quite a few monitors. I've got one, two, three, four external monitors that are kind of set up on a wood frame that I kind of constructed. And I've got a Windows PC that's hooked up to some of them that's doing the YouTube streaming. The MacBook Air doesn't really work well for video stuff. The fan starts kicking in and it gets really hot, and I don't know. I try to avoid it. So that's my setup. So why is it useful? I don't know. I like to, when I'm working on projects, I like to have one screen open that has like the requirements for what I'm implementing, and then just the other screen for the work that I'm doing. So it's usually handy to have two screens. But if I'm just chatting with people, other team members, then I just use the one screen. I probably use the external screen maybe a quarter of the time. It's not all the time. Okay, so this is the one that Manny was talking about. How do I stay organized? There's the mismatch of OneNote, Evernote. We have a shared office via Zoom. That's pretty cool. List what needs to be done on our client's Salesforce site and a list of specific "please do this today" requests. Yeah, that's pretty common. So for the work that I'm doing with my consulting company, DoWow, we have inside of Salesforce, we created a backlog object. And in the backlog, I will put requirements that I get from customers, and I'll put points on them. Like I'll put business points, story points. And then I have an employee in Madison, his name's John, He'll pull things off the backlog and work on them, and then when he's completed them, he'll move the stage over. Or actually, while he's working on it, he moves it to the like in progress stage, and then we'll put like a waiting for customer review stage, and then if they after they accept it, we'll mark it complete, and then that kind of moves off into a different view in Salesforce to show which backlog items were completed for that opportunity. So that's how I'm kind of staying organized um, within my own business. When I'm working on client projects, I've never actually been at a place that is using like Salesforce to manage their team, which is unfortunate, I think, because having your admins and developers like actually use Salesforce day to day, I think really helps them uh, do a better job for helping set it up for other users in the system. I think they come up with more ideas of how to make things efficient if they're actually like trying to use the thing every day too. But no, most companies that I see, the big enterprises, they typically use like Jira to keep track of the backlog of work. Um, then they'll have like a spreadsheet that keeps track of like high level status of a project. Um, Boy, I haven't seen people use like Microsoft Project in a long time. I don't know if that's still a thing. It's mostly just Jira and Excel spreadsheets, and then a lot of Word docs for requirements that are attached to Jira for some reason instead of just putting the content inside of Jira. Um, so yeah, that's I think how. Oh, for communication, um, I've used tools like Skype, um, Hangouts, Teams, a lot of on the project I'm now on now. They don't do much video, like video sharing. They do a lot of screen, like desktop sharing. But on other projects, they used video quite a bit, like in for Zoom meetings, so that you could like feel more connected to the project. Um, hey Victoria, how you doing? Just saw you on there. Um, yeah, so John and I actually use LinkedIn quite a bit for chatting. Um, I'm not quite sure why that is. For a while, we were using Salesforce groups where we just created a private group and then we would have conversations in there, or we would have conversations about a backlog item using activity feeds. And I think that worked well for very like disconnected conversations that we were having. But anytime we were like trying to like chat real time, for some reason we just kind of gravitated towards LinkedIn. It's probably a terrible place to do that, but I know it works for us. Um, let's see if Manning had other things to cover here. Yeah, looks like that was about it. Um, yeah, so he was commenting on a video that I did about flows versus custom lightning components. And Manning was saying that he probably thinks someone can understand the self-documenting flow more easily than the code. Um, I don't know. I think that's something that we're struggling with right now. So when you're trying to do a code review and things are written in Apex code, it's really easy to take the old version and the new version and use a tool like Beyond Compare to see the differences between the two. But when you do a flow and you want to compare the before and the after, there's no really good way to see what was just changed in the flow so that you can have an idea of what might be impacted. When you look at what the flow is, it's just a big blob of XML, like if you extract it from the org. So I guess it's just really hard to compare. But if you're just trying to read it, um, flows, you kind of have to drill into, you have to open up each element in a flow in order to see what it's really doing. And with Apex code, I mean, you just read it. Um, but yeah, flows, it's easy to tell how things are moving. Depending on how the Apex code is written, it may be just one long procedure, or it could be this complicated framework that is calling into different functions, and you kind of have to imagine how it might be working. So, as a consultant, I try to I try to use solutions that I think the team can support after I leave. So, I don't know if I'm on a team right now with a bunch of developers, and I kind of feel like I should probably focus on code solutions instead of configuration because I don't think they're going to want to support the configuration solutions after I leave. So there's that. I don't know. Yeah, it looks like those are the comments that I haven't replied to yet. Um, just kind of looking. I thought there was one that maybe I did reply to already. That was a good idea. I think it's really interesting to see people on here that are um, just trying to learn Salesforce on their own. Um, I did that when I first started for, I think, the first 3 months of it. I was a .NET programmer, and we were, so I was working for a company called Centair. Centair is in Wisconsin, and they do, well, at the time they did a lot of agile transformations, teaching companies how to shift from like waterfall to Scrum. And they also did staffing for consultants, programmers, and they would also do software projects in-house. And I was one of the people that was doing programming on site at a client. We would call that staff auging. So I would be at a client for maybe 3 months at a time, and I was also part of a team within Centair where we were trying to look at what trends were happening in the market and what like were the hot technologies to learn. And when we looked at the list, Salesforce was like, I don't know, like at the top, like maybe if it wasn't the top, it was like within the top three technologies. And I didn't know what it was, never heard of it. And this was maybe 7.5 years ago now. So I looked into it just because thought it would be important to know if it was like in the top technologies. And I started learning it, and it for me it was very familiar. It seemed a lot like Lotus Notes. I used to be a Lotus Notes developer back in the day, and this seemed like a web version of Lotus Notes, where you could just kind of have all of your data in one place, and everyone would have access to it, and you didn't have to build out all these different layers to present data to users. It was just kind of all built into the platform. So we didn't have Trailhead back then, so I was just trying to like find various YouTube videos um, and just go through their documentation. I was able to create developer orgs, so I was able to like set up my own account and try using it. And I knew nothing about the sales process, so like using Sales Cloud was very foreign to me. Like learning how a salesperson manages opportunities and things like that, pipelines. I didn't know any of that terminology, so I struggled with just understanding that. But I probably like 2, 3 months into it, the client that I was at like announced that they were going to switch from Dynamics to Salesforce, and they asked the team who wanted to help with that. And I was like, hey, I just learned was learning Salesforce, what a coincidence. And no one else on the team, none of the employees wanted anything to do with it. So they said, oh, okay, EJ, sure. Why don't you help? So I didn't really, I did mostly .NET programming that was talking to Salesforce and kind of extracting data from it and pushing it to it. I wasn't really going like into Salesforce and configuring it. They had another partner that was doing that, but that was kind of my first exposure to it. Um, but then just from being able to see their account and like log into it and look at it, then I really started to understand it better and was able to pass the admin certification. And then from there, now I felt comfortable helping them make some changes. The implementation partner uh, left after go live, and then they had like their admins within the company that were doing like the easy stuff, and then anytime they would get stuck, I would be able to step in and help them figure out how to fix it or how to do the more challenging things. So it's kind of weird because when I started out, I was good at like fixing the problems, but when it came down to like doing all the easy things, I didn't really have any experience with it. And even today I struggle with it. Like for example, setting up like reports. Uh, that's something that usually uh, someone else handles. So I usually only get involved when like they're trying to do something weird. So I know how to create like the report types and can get all that set up. But then usually someone else makes the report look pretty. So there's that. But it's so yeah, it's fun seeing all these people that are trying to learn it. I can definitely relate, and I would recommend keep trying because it's I think it's well worth the effort to put in it. Um, Mostly, I think getting involved in the community I think is probably the most rewarding part. I've made a lot of good friends over the years, and being able to, for example, hang out on a Saturday with 5 other people that are just obsessed with Salesforce as I am. I think it's pretty fun. Um, there's usually picnics and things like that they have over the summer, and of course the big uh, Dreamforce, Dreamfest party every year. There's the Midwest Dreamin' Conference that everyone goes to. So that's a lot of good times. Let's see, I'm just scrolling through some of the other comments here to see if there's anything of interest. I do get a lot of questions from people that are thinking about starting their own consulting company too. And I'm always happy to share any information that people want to know. Um, so over the last 7 years, I've helped 2 other consulting companies. I was the practice lead for 2 other companies before I started my own. So I've seen some of the struggles with trying to get into Salesforce. Um, I'd say comparing like those 2 experiences with starting my own, I think is definitely a lot easier. One of the challenges that I always had with established consulting companies is that becoming a Salesforce partner is kind of awkward because Salesforce wants you to be all in on Salesforce. So if you're partners with other technologies like Microsoft or Amazon, then I think there's a hesitation or fear that if you're involved in a project, you might recommend that the client uses a different technology. Um, so it just kind of makes the interactions a bit awkward. Now that My company is just solely focused on Salesforce. I don't really have any of those uh, conflicts of interest, I suppose you could call it. So I think it makes everything a lot easier. So if you're thinking about starting your own consulting business, I think there's still a lot of opportunity out there. Um, Salesforce keeps saying that there's not enough consulting partners out there, and they're trying to grow it. Um, and it's just about helping customers, documenting all of your successes, and then showing that to Salesforce, showing them what you're good at. And then as you're building trust and building your relationship with Salesforce, then they can help you grow. But yeah, so far it's been a very positive experience. Sometimes people like hearing about the money side of things, and I don't mind sharing that too. Uh, if you're interested, if it, once you get your certification and have some experience, um, so I guess it depends on a lot of factors actually, how much money you can make doing Salesforce. But I'm trying to think of some good rules. So I typically find like if you don't have any experience or any certifications, you could probably find an admin job for probably around $60,000. Uh, but that really depends on where you're located. So if you live in the middle of nowhere, and there's not a lot of companies, then it might be hard to find a good paying job. But if you're in a city that has a lot of companies and there's like a lot of demand, but not a lot of administrators, then you can make a decent amount of money. Um, but then if you, if you're in too populated of an area, like if you're in, um, so I'm trying to think of, in the United States, there's the big pockets of people like in Florida, California, New York. Um, I think those areas have more people, and that can tend to drive the prices down. So once you get certified, though, I think the average salary for an admin is like $95,000. Let me check. Share my screen. Ooh, computer's going really slow while I'm trying to stream here. Kickstart your career, Salesforce administrator. Oh, that's the developer. Yep, $95,000 average salary. So, I mean that usually assumes that you're certified and have some experience. So I'd say like once you hit the 2 year mark and you've got probably a couple of certifications, you should expect to be making that much. So I say try to start getting your experience as soon as possible. Don't wait until you get certified. So try to take probably one of the lower paying jobs first, or maybe try to do work on the side so that you can at least start the counter. So be working full time at McDonald's, um, but then also help out some nonprofit for um, I don't know, maybe $12 an hour or something. And even if you're only helping them like a few hours a week, you can still say, I've been doing Salesforce administration since this date, and it's a way to show that you've been doing it over a number of years, right? It doesn't really matter if it's been 40 hours a week or not. I think what's important is that you, you've been on the platform for that long, And I would actually say it's better to have experience in different accounts. Like if you could help out 5 different nonprofits over the span of 2 years, that's much more valuable than helping just one nonprofit over 2 years. Because you're going to get so much more experience every time you touch a new org because they're going to be using it in different ways. They're going to be using different features. Um, so try to touch as many different orgs as you can, uh, as quickly as you can, and that will help boost your salary up. So, and this is just for the admin side. So if you know how to program, then they jump up to 125. Um, so, and this is pretty much what I'm seeing too. So, so I'm a consultant. So in the consulting world, if you are have a billable rate of $125 an hour as a consultant working for a consulting company, that consulting company can probably afford to pay you $125,000 salary with benefits. So that, benefits cost a lot of money. I mean, that could be like $40,000 just for insurance, depending on your pool of employees, plus time for vacations and other expenses and things like that. So, plus they still need to have money to pay for their salespeople and other overhead within the consulting company. So, I mean, even if they're billing at $125 an hour, so they're bringing in probably $250,000 of revenue in a year, of which you would be getting 170-ish, and then the rest is for overhead and profit and things like that. Bench time is a big expense. So if you're a consultant and you're in between projects, some consulting companies would still pay you. That's called bench time. Some other consultant companies won't pay you while you're in between projects, and then typically you'll make more money for those. So maybe you'll make more like 150,000 a year, but you don't get paid in between projects. So it just all depends on how that company is structured. Hey Mina, I just saw you join. Say you're working on your admin certification, no prior experience in IT. That's awesome. How hard is it to get the job? As I read job requirements, they need more than Salesforce admin knowledge. Boy, I wonder what else they're looking for. So if you have, yeah, I mean, when you're trying to get a job, um, communication skills, I think, are one of the most important things. So, um, do you need prior experience in IT? I would say not. A lot of the Salesforce admin jobs, they're they could be run out of the sales department and not the IT department. So it depends on how big the company is. If it's an enterprise type of company, then yeah, the Salesforce is probably run by their IT department. But if they're like a small to medium sized company, then it's probably they might not even have an IT department. And it's just some VP of sales said, hey, let's use Salesforce, and now they want to change it and they need an admin. How do you write a job resume for beginners? You try to focus on the skills that you know, and not so much on where you've worked. So I can show you my resume, for example. Can I show you my resume? How would I do that? Let me bring it up. I have mine created in Google Drive. And let me try to open that. It's going slow. So basically on my resume, I focus on the the type of things that I know how to do, and my work history is actually just a really tiny part of it. I don't bother getting into what I've done at each company that I've worked at. Wow, this is going very slowly while I'm streaming here. Okay, I've almost got it open. Yeah, this is going to have a bunch of my personal information, but my personal info is not all that secret. Just waiting for it to come up so I can give you an example. If you want to send me your resume, I'd be happy to review it and give you any suggestions I can come up with. Wow, I think I need to have like a second computer that I can show stuff on because this is incredibly slow. So, I have a photo. I recommend you have a photo of yourself in your resume. Try to make it so that you are memorable, and photos do a great job of that. I've got my contact info on here. So, yeah, this is personal info that you can get easily off of the duo.com website. I've got my certification because I think this is what companies are mostly interested in when they're hiring me, because I'm looking at pretty high level positions. So now I'm going, I just have a title. Hey, I'm a Salesforce consultant, and this is what I do. I'm an architect, developer, administrator. This is what I'm trying to achieve, and these are the technologies that I'm familiar with. Victoria, you're writing it tomorrow. Cool. Yeah, I'd love to help you out if you want to. Um, so yeah, these are just like, these are about me, right? So this doesn't really matter um, about the companies that I've worked at or how long I've worked there. I've got projects here that I've worked on, which aren't necessarily specific companies. Like I'm not W-2 employee at any of these companies. Um, so this is more of like, these are the companies that I've been employed at receiving a payroll check. Um, So yeah, I mean, if yours could look similar to this, but it might only have like one line item here, or it might have no, maybe one or two client projects, or even zero. Just leave this blank, but just kind of focus on what you know and what you can offer to a company. And one more thing, the resume, I mean, should really just be, it should be like a tool to help get the conversation started. Like after they look at it, they should say, "We want to uh, talk to Victoria. Let's talk her. Let's ask her some questions about this. This looks interesting. Let's learn more." And then in the interview is kind of where you're trying to close the deal. Don't expect the resume to live on its own and expect a company to make a decision just on what's in a resume. It's really just a conversation starter. Um, Vishal, Says after I get my Salesforce, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't even sharing any of that. I thought I was sharing my screen, but I wasn't. After I get my Salesforce uh, admin certs, where should I apply to maximize my chances to land a job after you get your Salesforce cert? I don't know. I would probably take a different approach. So just getting back to my resume here. So I've got my photo, got my contact info. Um, so these certs, I guess you'd probably blank if you're just starting out. You don't have that, but just focus on here's the stuff that you know. So basically, this could be like a list of things that you've learned through doing trailheads. And then I just wouldn't worry about what client projects you've been on yet. Leave that blank. And maybe your work and education. This just might be one or two bullets. So this is the format that I use. I don't really go into depth about what I've done at each company. But getting back to what you should do to minimize your chances of getting a job. So finding a job, if it's your first job, I guess even if it's not your first job, I would try to, some people use the approach of casting a big net. I don't really like that approach. I say you should figure out where you want to work and then try to establish a relationship with that company. So that might mean figuring out who the managers are, finding out what groups employees of that company participate in. For example, in our area, there's the user group meetings. So you would attend the local user group meetings, find people from that company, and start getting to know them. Introduce yourself, make friends with those people, try to learn about the company, uh, and then make sure that they know that you're looking for work. And usually a connection can be made. It's so the reason I say that is obviously it's a lot easier to get hired at a company if they know you already. You're not a stranger. You're not just someone that dropped off a resume. But if you are friends with an employee and now you come in as a referral, that increases your chances of getting hired there. So try to come in with a referral. And how do you get a referral? Make friends with people that already work there. So that's my advice for maximizing your chance to land a job. It's kind of like a sales. It's the same thing as sales. You have to sell yourself, and it's like saying, how do I maximize my chance of selling something? There's the one approach of cold calling a gazillion companies and hoping that you get lucky. But really, the best salespeople are relationship salespeople. So they establish relationships first, and then business results from that. So I would say try to do the same thing when trying to sell yourself to get a job. Uh, I do get a lot of people that ask me to hire them, and I'm not in a position to be able to hire people outside of Wisconsin yet. So, in order for me to have an employee, I have to withhold taxes, and the the state that the person lives in is where you have to pay the taxes to. So, if I were to hire somebody in Texas, I have to now get set up to do Texas state withholding taxes, and that just complicates things for me. So right now I'm only hiring people in Wisconsin. And I've got one employee so far. His name's John. He's a great guy. I was very lucky to get introduced to him. He already has his admin certification, and I'm trying to help him grow. Erkan G, how are you today? From New Jersey, would like to tell you my history. I have an IT background, took off from work to raise my daughter. During that time, I learned Salesforce. Woohoo! Studied for the admin cert. I got my certification at the end of the year. Wow, that's amazing. So now you're looking for a position in Salesforce. Cool. Your experience is only Trailhead and training videos. That's amazing. So you've got the cert. Way to go. You're already ahead of the game. Where do you live? So next step is to build a relationship with the company you want to work at. Where do you want to work? Are you already attending your local Salesforce user group meetings? So right now it's going to be about networking, right? And yeah, so another way uh, to get a job is to post your profile on LinkedIn, and recruiters will start contacting you, and you can have a recruiter do the work for you. So make sure your LinkedIn profile has a nice photo. Make sure that your your title in LinkedIn says that you're a Salesforce administrator, and I think there's an option to say that you're open to opportunities. So make sure that that's turned on. Well, great. So, for example, would you want to relocate to Texas or California or Wisconsin? When you say you're open to anything, because if you're willing to relocate, if you'll up and move, that and you're in the United States and you're authorized to work in the United States. Oh yeah, Women in Tech group. That's great. That's a great. Those are usually great groups. I know the one in Milwaukee is very good. Um, okay, so you're in Princeton. Uh, yeah, New Jersey is a populated area. So, I mean, I don't know if that is one of those too populated areas where there's just a lot of people, so that kind of drives maybe there's more supply of administrators there. I'm just not familiar with that market, but the user group meetings. So there's Women in Tech, but if you go to a Salesforce user group meeting, typically at the beginning of those meetings, companies will say, hey, we're looking to hire an administrator, and then you just go talk to that person. So that's usually the best way to do it. So I was saying at the beginning that today was the Milwaukee user group meeting, and they announced two job openings. One was to hire a developer, one was to hire, it sounded like a junior administrator out in Madison. Oh. So the rest of tonight, I still need to finish writing I need to write an essay for a client, a potential client, of why I want to help them out. So I've got to do that tonight still. So I'm probably going to sign off in about 10 minutes here. Yeah, tomorrow's going to be a busy day. I think for spring 20, I don't know if there's any new features that I'm super excited about, but Hey Manning, how you doing? Kind of went over some of the things that you had posted in the comments earlier, Manning. Thank you for sending those. So I posted a video, maybe it was yesterday or the day before, about the new feature in Flows where you can have a flow automatically run whenever a record is edited or created, which I thought was going to be super amazing, but then was a bit disappointed. But we talked a bit about it in our user group meeting today, and uh, I think their comment was uh, they're great if you use them right, and the whole thing was that this new feature to have a flow handle the update is that it's very fast because it's on a before insert and a before update. Um, and typically, when you run other things like process builders, those are in the after, and they're slower. So the whole key thing for the flow running when a record updates is that it's an extremely fast way to manipulate the record as it's being inserted. Hey, thanks for checking in, Manning. Have a good night. I'm gonna be signing off too anyway soon. Um, After the user group meeting, I got a chance to uh, talk with Larry, and Larry is trying to start another user group meeting in Milwaukee. This one's going to be focused on um, Marketing Cloud. So he wants a group that's focused on maximizing like Pardot and Marketing Cloud. And I think he's already like started the paperwork with Salesforce to get like an official group set up so that he's like listed in the community so people can find it. But if you're in the Milwaukee area or Madison area or anywhere, I guess, in southeastern Wisconsin and want to learn about Marketing Cloud, I think we're going to pick a date soon to have our first meeting. And right now he's looking for a co-leader of that group. And if no one else steps up, I've offered to co-lead the Marketing Cloud Milwaukee group. And I admit I know nothing about Marketing Cloud. Never used it. Well, I think I used it once, but I didn't even know how to log into it, and the client had to like actually show me how to log in, and I just helped like figure out how something was set up for them. I didn't retain any of it, but I think to co-lead it, I just need to do more of the um, administrative stuff and just help facilitate the meetings. Um, so I have been getting a lot of phone calls from recruiters about jobs in San Francisco, some in Texas. I don't think there were any on the East Coast though. Um, it's funny because some of these recruiters they don't like to take no for an answer. It seems like, I live in Wisconsin and I've got kids, and they say they need to have me on site in San Francisco 5 days a week, and they just want to know what my bill rate will be, and kind of tell them there's like no bill rate that I would take to go there. And they're like, no, 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 just tell us your bill rate. So that's kind of weird. But anyway, in terms of like bill rates and money and stuff, I started talking about um, how much admins make, how much developers make. If you want to go on your own and do like 1099 contracting, and you've got the experience, then I mean you can be making um, easily $100 an hour for remote work doing development, and that's remote. If you're on site, you can typically get a lot more because it's so much harder to find people that will be on site. So companies will pay more. So then you're more like 125, 150, 160. Um, yeah, I think they offered me 160 for those California positions, and I just wasn't interested. Yeah, I know. Or can if once you're married with kids, you just can't pick up and move, right? Uh, and another way to get these remote positions is to kind of not talk about remote at first, and just when they say they need you on site, just say okay, and just start interviewing and get to the point where they like you. Um, don't try not to commit to a dollar amount up front. Be very vague about how much money you would need. Like if they're asking you for what your bill rate is in California, like say if I really wanted to do this, the approach that I would use is I would say, my rate is anywhere between 100 and $200 an hour. It's really going to vary on the terms, right? So if they only want me there for a week or two, the rate's going to be high. But if you're going to want me there if you're going to commit to a whole year, well, then that can bring the price down. And if the terms are like, if you're going to wait 30 days to pay me, well, then that's going to drive the price up. But if you're going to pay me after 7 days, then I can do a better deal. And just be very vague about the rates and just say, well, we'll have to figure that out later. Let's just see if they're even interested. So if you can start interviewing, um, see if you're even a good match. Maybe you're not a good match, who knows? But if you find out you're a good match and they like you and they want to bring you on, then you can start locking into a price and just say, okay, well, maybe you need 150, and but they'll have to cover your expenses to travel because you don't live anywhere near there. And they'll say, oh no, that's too much. And then you'll say, well, I could come down if maybe I was only there once every few weeks. Or you could just kind of on the side mention, well, I've worked for $100 in the past for other companies, but those are remote. And so sometimes just by mentioning it, mentioning it because of another experience, but not really suggesting it for this experience, that might bring them to kind of ask if you would do it for this one. So there's ways to kind of turn the conversation. I mean, in the end, you can just turn it down if they make you an offer for 150 an hour on site and you're not interested in traveling, then just say something else came up. But all you're really out is the time you spent interviewing. Ercan, wow, your next certificate's going to be developer cert. Have you do you already know how to code? Like, can you do JavaScript or Java or C Sharp or? Um, I think that's pretty aggressive to go from admin to dev. I mean, unless you've actually coded before. If you're going to be a developer, I think it's great that you got the admin cert first. I think that's a good foundation. But if you already have the ability to code, like if you already know JavaScript, then you could start looking for developer jobs right now. I mean, picking up Apex code isn't much different than Java. But to get an admin job remote, I think is very difficult. Um, I don't think a lot of companies are gonna just. Um, well, I guess it depends on their screening process, but I just imagine turning over the keys to the org to someone that is just on the internet would be a pretty dangerous move for a company. What are entry-level admin tasks that are common? Entry level, you're going to be like setting up users, unlocking accounts, resetting passwords, adding fields, maybe setting up reports. Um, those are going to be like the entry level things. If they have other admins there, the other admins will probably create the or decide how the object model is going to be. Like they'll come up with the design, and then maybe you'll take the design and you'll actually create the object and create the fields and create the page layouts, create the list views. Um, so yeah, that is a entry level admin job. If you've got a oh hi Tyago. Tyago, is that how you say her name? I'm terrible at names. Studying for the admin cert. Background is in business and financial area. Awesome. What are the complementary certifications I can do after Salesforce admin? For you, I'd recommend Sales Cloud Consultant. Either the Sales Cloud Consultant or the Advanced Admin. But if you the reason I suggest the Sales Cloud is because if you have a business background, um, I think you should be focusing mostly on working with the working with businesses to understand their business and how you can map it to Salesforce, and having the Sales Cloud certification, Sales Cloud Consultant, really gives you exposure to all the different features in Sales Cloud and what they could be using to better streamline their business. And then you can work for a consulting partner to help architect solutions for their customers. That's what I would do. What about the salary of certified admin with no experience? I would say, depending on the area, probably about $60,000. Uh, oh no, you're certified. Probably $80,000. Yeah. Um, in the Midwest, I would say $80,000 certified admin. No experience. If you have good communication skills and you don't need like work sponsorship if you're a citizen. Uh, yeah, I mean, 80,000 is what probably someone fresh out of college would get for like a developer role. And if you have the certification, that's like having a degree, basically. Right? If you don't have experience, you have to have credentials. That's kind of what the college degree is. So if you don't have experience, you need a degree. In Salesforce, if you don't have experience, you should at least have the certification. But if you have experience, you don't need the certification necessarily. You can get a job without a cert. I don't know if a lot of people realize that or not, but you do not need a certification. I've seen a lot of job postings out there for they just say like, hey, if you're eager to learn and you know what Salesforce is, we'll hire you. But if you're not oh yeah, you're a citizen. Okay. If communication is such a big thing, and I, I know there's a lot of people from India um, that watch the channel and are in the states working, and even out of the states trying to find jobs. And communication is really a challenge. Just be transparent about it. I've worked on many projects where when you have to take the time to document everything that needs to be done and hand it to a person that doesn't speak very good English, then it adds time, and time is money, right? So if things just take longer because the communication skills aren't that great, then they can't afford to pay that much. Ram, what are your thoughts of Salesforce recruiting companies like Mason Frank? Have you heard of them or anyone who has used them? I love Mason Frank, and yeah, I've used them in the past. I've used them to hire people, and I've used them to get work. And there are a lot of nice people that work at Mason Frank. They have people that contact me on a regular basis, not only to see if I need work, but also if when they have candidates that they feel are strong, they let me know about them and give me a chance to hire them or refer them to somewhere. Um, Mason Frank always has a big presence at the conferences. Their their employees are always very nice and friendly. I do think the rates that Mason Frank uh, so when they bring me projects, the bill rates are pretty low, and when they offer me consultants to hire, the rates are pretty low. So I don't think that's good or bad. I just think it is what it is. So if I need to hire a cheap uh, admin or developer, I know I can go to Mason Frank and they can easily give me a list of 10 resumes to pick from. But in general, I like Mason Frank, and I would recommend um, having them in your network. Taigo, do you think? Well, first of all, Erkan, you're very welcome. If there's anything else I can help you with, let me know. Do you think Tableau, Business Intelligence, and Pardot a good move for Salesforce admin? Uh, Tableau, I would say probably don't waste your time. I've used Tableau before, and it's powerful, but I don't think it needs a Salesforce admin to use it. I think uh, Tableau Guru can benefit by working with a Salesforce admin to help pull in data because you can connect from Tableau into Salesforce and pull data. So it's helpful to work together with that person, but I don't think, um, I think you would, just focusing on Tableau, I think would be too limited. But the other one, Pardot, yes, I think Pardot is a good move. Pardot people are hard to find, and it's tightly integrated with Salesforce. I would, if you could know both Pardot and Marketing Cloud, I would learn them both. I wouldn't just pick one without the other. And I think the combination of the two is the way to go. Hey, Ram says, I want to thank you for taking time to answer. Hey, no problem. It's my pleasure. Oh, and then you said, what would you say is typical workday for a sales admin? Sales admin, a typical sales ad. I don't know what a typical one is. So there's, if you're working at an enterprise, uh, is going to be different than working for like a dentist office. So if you're at a dentist office, you're probably going to be answering the phone, uh, booking appointments inside of Salesforce, and when the boss forgets their password, you'll probably reset it, and maybe you'll create some new fields to capture some more data, and maybe you'll create some reports. But if you're in an enterprise situation, now you're going to be part of a team, and the admin is going to be working with business analysts, and the business analyst is going to say, hey, we need this functionality added. And the admin is going to make suggestions of how you could implement that and configure it and maybe give a demo. And then if they like it, you put those changes in production. So they're going to be creating custom objects, creating flows, creating process builders, um, maybe creating reports, list views, maybe managing moving changes from sandbox to production, running backups, um, creating users, resetting passwords, all that good stuff. I think it's a fun job. But yeah, a typical work day would be like you walk in and and someone tells you so and so can't do this or is getting some error, and you got to figure out why. So you figure out why, or or the business user wants it to do something, and you have no idea how to do it, and you try to figure out how to do it, and they always want to know how long it's going to take. When will it be done? Um, how many years experience would you say it would take from going to Salesforce admin to a senior admin? I think I think varies person to person. I wouldn't say it should be based on uh, time. It should be based on experience. So if let's say you were an admin for one company and you just did the same, and all you did was create reports and list views and custom objects and custom fields, and that's all you did, and you did that for 5 years, I wouldn't consider you a senior Salesforce admin. But if you were an admin at a company and you focused on really interacting with the business, and you looked for problems that they were having, and you started finding inefficiencies in the process, and you started coming up with solutions on your own in Salesforce, and maybe created like custom flows, and maybe we're installing third-party applications uh, that could help those business users, that and you did that for that one company, and then you quit and you went and did that for another company, and you did that for a third company, all in a matter of 3 months. I would say at the end of the 3 months, you could probably call yourself a senior Salesforce admin, because you've demonstrated the ability to understand the business and how to use the tool to solve the business needs. So however long it's going to take you to get to that point is how long it's going to take, and that's different for everyone and how motivated they are. But I consider when I see someone say that they're a senior admin, to me that means that they know the tool well enough that they know how to apply it to business processes and problems, and help solve those problems. Oh no, ask as much as you want. I'm happy to share anything you want to know. Thanks for joining the stream and asking questions. It gets really boring when it's just me. Uh, your name's complicated. I apologize. I barely know how to pronounce English words, let alone Brazilian words. Oh, you live in Las Vegas. That's awesome. It's hard to put a feet on the door in Salesforce. Yeah, it's all about networking, right? So you gotta you gotta make friends in the community. So attend those Salesforce meetings and get to know the people, and then you'll find all the doors opening up. Boy, if you're hoping things will change once you get the cert, um, I don't know, maybe. I think I think there's some companies that obviously won't hire without a certification, the same as there's some companies that won't hire a person that doesn't have a master's degree. There's some companies that won't hire without a bachelor's degree, but there's an awful lot of companies that don't care about that stuff. And there's a lot of companies that just really like a person that's motivated. They're really like hungry to learn and help. Um, oh, so there's a book. You should read this book called The Ideal Team Player. It's about being humble, hungry, and smart. So if you can demonstrate those qualities in an interview, I think it increases your chances of getting hired. And even if you can convey that prior to an interview by the way that you communicate, um, like not trying to like always be asking for the job. I want the job. How do I get a job? But maybe thinking of just like how could I help companies? How could I help that company over there, even though I'm not their employee? Is there anything that I could help them do? Like maybe find out um, community things that that company supports, and then try to support those same things. Right? You don't have to be paid by them to support their mission. But if you come across as really just wanting to help that company, I think that goes a long way. That's my opinion anyway. I don't know. So yeah, so what I'm trying to do is just help more people get into Salesforce. So I was a practice lead at two other consulting companies, and I think the missions at those companies were typically like we want to help our clients, and I wanted to help people get into Salesforce. That's my mission. So if I can do that without helping clients, I would do that. But if I think it's easier to help clients so that so that I can raise money so that I can help people get into Salesforce. Um, so my mission wasn't quite in line with what other consulting companies were, so I wanted to start my own. So I'm trying to create. Well, I've created DoWow. I've been running this business for almost 6 months now, and really the goal is to help as many people get into Salesforce as possible. What training resources besides Trailhead would you suggest for someone who wants to learn actual Salesforce tasks that I'd be doing in the real world? I've come across a lot of Salesforce cert training. I've used Focus on Force. I think there's someone called something Wheeler. Maybe it's Mike Wheeler or Steve Wheeler. I'm not sure, but I think I've heard a lot of good things about that one. I've never looked at it, but I think that's on like Udemy or one of those sites. Um, I mean, most of these training things are geared towards prepping you for the exam. I agree. Um, but the thing with what the day-to-day tasks of a Salesforce admin are is that you don't really know. I mean, you're going to have business people that are asking you to do things, and it's your job to have all these tools in your tool belt so that you can reach in there and fix that problem when it comes up or solve that problem. Um, and so, unless you know what tools are available, it's hard to fix them, right? If you only know about a screwdriver and a hammer, then you're always going to try to use those two tools for everything, but you don't realize that you've got like a power drill and a socket wrench and a blowtorch and all kinds of other tools available. So I'd say, yeah, I mean, if you want to get into Salesforce, the thing is that you got to know all the different things, and they're always changing. They change every 4 months. Yeah, Mike Wheeler was the name on Udemy. Yeah, I've heard other people say a lot of good things about Mike Wheeler. I don't know him though. Uh, yeah, I mean, can you contact me about that when I get certified? I mean, you can contact me anytime you want. Um, I can't hire people unless they're in Wisconsin. So right now I'm just kind of focused on helping people in Wisconsin, but I'm happy to give you any kind of advice you want and maybe try to, I get a lot of recruiters that contact me. So actually I got this vision of, maybe we could keep like a list of people that are want to get into Salesforce, and maybe I could create a form, right? Maybe you could like add yourself to it, and you put like your name and your email, your Trailhead link, and then I could like keep track of how many badges that you're earning and what your certifications are. And then every time I get one of these recruiters call in, I could just tell them, hey, like, no, I'm not interested, but here's like five other people that contacted me that might be interested, and maybe I can just help connect people. I don't know. It's just it was a thought that I had one night that I haven't taken much action on, but anything I can do to help you guys. Difference between a consultant and an admin. Boy, what's the difference between? I mean, there's a consultant is so there's like two types of consultants. There's ones that do staff augmenting, where when a company um, wants to hire somebody, but they can't find a person to hire, they'll reach out to a consulting staffing company and say, "Hey, can we rent a person for 3 months until we find someone to hire?" So there's that type of consultant. That's just like a staffing consultant. That's so that a lot of what I do is that. Um, but then there's another type of consultant where a business will say, we have a really hard problem and we need to bring an expert in because our staff can't figure it out. So we'll use a consulting company and use their consultants to solve that problem. And then when they're done with the problem, then they go away. So, I mean, those are the two types of consultants. So an admin could be they could be brought in as a staff aug consultant for 3 months at a time, or they could be brought in as part of a small project. Like maybe the company is rolling out Salesforce and they need to hire a partner to implement Salesforce, and you're an admin consultant there to just help get it started. And once Salesforce is turned on, then you leave. So that would be more like project-based work as opposed to staff aug work. Um, so most of the revenue that comes into DoWow is through staff aug work. But the problem with staff aug work is that when a company wants to bring a person on for 3 months, they don't want to bring on a person that doesn't know what they're doing. So they only want to bring on someone that has certifications and experience. So when you're a consultant, you're expected that you know how to do, you have experience doing the job. So you would never see someone that's with no experience, no certification in a consulting role. That would be very odd. So what Duo tries to do to help people get to that level is when I get project work instead of staff aug work. So say I get referred a company that just has been using Salesforce for 2 years. They got a new VP of sales in and they want to do something different now with their Salesforce org. They'll bring me on. I'll understand what changes they want done. We'll write up like a list of all the changes that need to be made. I'll give them like a dollar amount that I think that's going to cost. Like maybe it'll be a $5,000 project. Um, so then I take that and I break it up into chunks. Maybe some of it is super easy, and I can hand that off to my employee and say, here, get some experience doing these simple changes. Maybe some of the more complicated things I'll step in and do. Like maybe there has to be like a complicated flow created, or maybe you have to write code, and so I'll do that part of the project. But then show the other guy like what I'm doing, and then we do that over and over. We do that for like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects, and now the employee that I have has 6 projects worth of experience. Now they could be pitched as a consultant because now they've got experience. Maybe over that time they've also gotten their certification. So now I can either staff them somewhere, or maybe now that person is uh, gain enough knowledge that they can go get a job at a bigger company, and I've just helped them move on to the next step. I help them become the next level admin. So that's kind of the point of this. I don't mean to imply that I'm the next level admin. I'm trying to help everyone else become the next level admin. So that's my business model, and that is, I suppose, what a Salesforce consultant is. there's a certain level of stress that can come with all these different jobs too. And when you're a consultant and you're doing project work, um, so there's like project work that's has a deadline for a fixed price. That's a very stressful job. Then there's the other extreme, low stress job where you're a salaried employee of a business of a company like a dentist office that's using Salesforce and you're their admin. That's a low stress job. Um, Doing consulting staffing is kind of halfway in between. You're you have the stresses of being expected to solve all the problems, but you're typically not under this tight deadline where the company is going to lose money if the problem's not solved, or you're paid by the hour. So from your point of view, it doesn't, from your consulting company's point of view, it doesn't matter how long it takes. You're getting paid by the hour. But if you're on a fixed price project, then if it takes you longer than it thought, then the company loses money. So that you're always under pressure to get things done quickly. You like the idea of working as a contract admin and work with 2 to 3 different orgs a year. Yeah, I love that too. Is it possible to do that with a cert and no experience? You can do that without a cert and no experience. Yeah. So the way that you do what you're describing is you go to work for a partner, go to work for an existing partner, Salesforce partner, and become an employee of a partner. And what'll happen is, so partners love to hire people that are eager to learn. Um, so a lot of places don't need experience and you don't need the cert, but there's an expectation that you'll get your admin cert within a fixed period of time. And say if you don't get your cert within the first 6 months, then they'll fire you. Um, or maybe it's 3 months, or maybe it's the first year, but there's usually some time period where they'll say, yeah, we'll give you a shot. And if you succeed, we'll keep you on. Um, so partners work where when a Salesforce customer purchases the software, they have to have a partner come in and implement it, do all the customizations. So those projects are typically done for a fixed dollar amount. Um, and then it's the staff of the partner that does all the configuration. So they'll have a staff of developers and admins, and you'll be on that. You'll probably be not only on that project, but maybe you'll have 2 or 3 projects that you're working at the same time. Um, it's a great way to get a lot of experience very quickly. And that's the type of environment that I really like to work in. Very fast paced, high pressure, got to solve stuff. Staff aug admin work for me can get a bit boring. Once you've been there for 6 months, you've kind of, I think, learned all you're going to learn there and help as much as you're going to help. Where can you find Salesforce partner in your area? So if you go to Salesforce, if you Google like the App Exchange, Salesforce App Exchange, I won't do it on my computer here because my computer's going way too slow. But the App Exchange is where you can find like third-party plugins for Salesforce, but you can also find consultants. And if you search an App Exchange for consultants, you can filter based on state. Well, first by country, and then by region within the country. And then, so you'll get a big list of partners or consultant. They're partners really, because you can't list in there unless you're a partner. So then you can filter them out again by the number of employees that they have, or I think number of certified admins. So if you want to work for a big company, then filter out all the small ones. But if you want a small company, then filter out all the big ones, right? And then you'll get a list of companies, and then you can look them up in the phone book and see where they're located and start to network with them. There's some big partners like Blue Wolf and Capgemini that I think will show up in like every region. Looks like Urkana's gonna put the link for it in there. Um, so that's how you can find your partners through the website. The other way to find partners is to attend your local user group meetings, and you find your how do you find your local user group meeting? I think there's like a website called success.salesforce.com, or if you search for Salesforce communities, then it'll ask you where you're located and it'll show you all the user groups in your area. And then you ask to join the user group and then you find out when your next meeting is. But going to the user group meeting is probably the best way to not only find your partners, but also start building the relationships with them. Yeah, we'll follow them on LinkedIn. Yeah, find out if you even want to work there. Not all partners are the same. I guess that's true for like any job, right? When you're interviewing, you should be always thinking about if that's the place you want to work. Very intimidated about going to a user group meeting. Any advice? Have a beer before you go. Have two beers. Uh, I don't know. I've been to a lot of meetings and everyone's very nice. They're always very eager to introduce you to people and will want to know more about you. Especially if there's usually not recruiters at these events, but they're usually the the partners will want to know if you're available. I mean, it's a very I mean, I've only been to like Milwaukee and Madison. I don't really know what they're like across the country, or across the world even. But I found everyone that's involved in Salesforce is extremely nice. It's not like I used to go to a lot of Microsoft events, like JavaScript user groups and or C sharp user group meetings, like more tech like programming user groups, and I always thought those were very they weren't very good networking events because it was always a lot of introverted people. You would walk in and everyone would just be sitting in their chair, maybe eating a slice of pizza and just kind of keeping themselves to themselves. But I found in the Salesforce community, it's a lot of extroverts for some reason, and the gender is very balanced. Usually the Microsoft stuff is all guys, but in Salesforce it seems to be well balanced, and it's just a very different atmosphere. Uh, Mike Wolf, how you doing? Do you see remote admin positions increasing? Hmm. Well, I've been in like consulting for 7 years, but I've only been on the sales side of it for maybe five of it. Remote, I don't see a lot of remote admin. I see more remote developers. I'm trying to think of the remote admin stuff that I do see. I've seen a lot of stuff on Upwork for admins, but the pay rates are pretty low. Um, yeah, I've seen some remote, but I can't say that I've seen it increasing. excuse me, maybe it depends on how I interpret that question. Do I predict that remote admin positions will increase? Uh, no, I don't have a reason to think that. And I don't see any. I haven't seen anything that would say it's been increasing in the past. They meet at 9:30 in the morning. uh, yeah, maybe it's a little too early for a beer. Hmm. Wow, that's early for a user group meeting. You can bring a friend. Bringing a friend is might solve that awkwardness. But just if you bring a friend, don't use the friend as a crutch, right? You still got to meet the other people that are there. Pay rates for junior admins and regular admins. So a pay rate for uh, so are we talking about like a W-2 salary, like you want a job, or are you talking about a bill rate for a consultant? Because I don't see a lot of consulting for junior admins. Usually they just want to hire a W-2 junior admin. And a junior admin without a cert is about $60,000 in the United States. But if you have a certification, then it's more like $80,000. But if you're a regular admin, which I would consider someone with a cert and like 2 years experience, then that will be like $95,000 a year salary with benefits. And I think those rates would probably change if you're on the coast. Like I think cost of living is higher in California, so I think pays are probably higher. But at the same time, there's more people there, so that might drive the prices down. So I really don't know. I can say that the bill rates as a consultant that I've seen in California haven't been any different than I've seen in Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Florida. They all seem to be about the same. But definitely try to get some experience now. I mean, I've mentioned Upwork.com. Uh, if you could do a project on Upwork, there's a lot of very trivial projects on there. The pay rate's pretty low, but if you can document that you did the project and you have a reference, I mean, you don't really need like a reference, but just like the name of the company that you helped and what you did for them. Now you can say that you have been doing Salesforce administration since a date, and then now you can start to say, well, I've been doing it for the last 2 years, if that was 2 years ago. So the important thing is just to start doing something. If not on Upwork, then if you attend your user group meeting, there's usually nonprofits that attend those things, and you can help a nonprofit out. Do I think it's best to focus on being a specialist on one aspect of Salesforce, like building reports, creating flows, etc., or being more of a generalist? I would say the examples that you gave are not being specific. I would say that's being a generalist. If all you know how to do is like create reports, workflows, that's just basic admin stuff. When I think of specialist in Salesforce, to me, that's more of the cloud specific things. So, like, I'm a sales cloud admin, or I'm a service cloud, or I'm a community cloud, or I'm a marketing cloud. Those are more of the specifics. But being able to build reports, I would say is that's going to apply to everything. I mean, you got to know how to do that, no matter what. Workflows. I mean, you got to. That's just part of the platform. That's a generic thing. Yeah, those are just platform. Like if you just buy a force.com license for like the $25 level subscription, you're able to do all of those things. But if you know how to work with accounts, opportunities, contacts, those are Sales Cloud objects. And understanding how those interact with each others and what all the features are of them, that's a that's a Sales Cloud consultant. That's a specialty. So what do I recommend? I recommend you specialize in uh, a cloud, maybe a couple of well, you should be really good at least one cloud, and you should also be good at a business. So say you're really good at Sales Cloud consulting for dentists. So notice that dentists are probably part of healthcare, right? But healthcare is way too big of a business to specialize in. So you need to narrow that down and be good at a specific type of business or an industry so that you understand all of the lingo associated with that industry. I suppose it depends what you want to do. I mean, this is what Salesforce recommends partners do. If you don't want to be a partner, um, then it doesn't matter. Then I guess you have to decide what you want to do, right? Hey, Daryl, Darnell. Sorry, Darnell. Just joined the live video. Do you have any experience doing Salesforce projects in Asia, Singapore, or nope, Jakarta? I have zero experience in Asia. I've only implemented for customers in the United States and Africa. I'm actually helping a nonprofit out right now that's in Africa. They're using the higher education HEDA, which I don't think is called higher education anymore. I think it's just education. So it's EDA, the EDA package. When do you think Salesforce Classic will end? Never. Do you think companies will get really hard time to move to Lightning? Yes. Businesses don't like to change if they don't have to. Like, why spend the money? I mean, I've worked with companies that are very eager about using new technology, and I've worked with companies that hate new technology. I've seen like really both extremes. Salesforce understands that there's a lot of people paying them a lot of money to keep Classic turned on. Um, I think what they're doing is all their new customers are always on Lightning. Eventually, the old customers will. I don't know. I think they're just always going to have to support it. In fact, I mean, right now there's this thing where classic orgs do this URL hacking to make things work, where you click a JavaScript link and it'll like open up a form to open up to pre-populate fields on a input form, and in Lightning you weren't able to do that. And now I guess they just announced that they added to Lightning the URL hacking that you could do back in the Classic. So I think they're trying to eliminate obstacles for people to switch over. But companies with these really big orgs that are running on Classic and are paying Salesforce millions of dollars, I don't see them just shutting those people off. I've also seen, so there's big performance issues with Lightning if you have page layouts that have a lot of fields. So I've seen crazy number of fields on objects, like 100 fields. And when you try to load these things in Lightning, it can take a long time. I think coming soon, they're adding to Lightning the ability to just drop specific fields onto a Lightning page, so you don't have to include the whole detail page, and I think that's going to improve the performance. But there's a lot of Visualforce pages that are very slow to render inside of Lightning, so I can understand why they don't just want to switch over. I prefer Lightning though, and it's really frustrating when I'm working with clients that are still on Classic. Uh, do you think it's a big leap to go from a Salesforce admin to a developer? What would you need to know to be an entry-level developer? So to be an entry level, yes. So yes, I think it's a big leap. Um, I really think they're two different mindsets. Um, I have more of a developer background, so I know how to. So you just have to know how to program, and it really doesn't matter if it's Salesforce or JavaScript or C Sharp. I mean, you have to be able to. Um, any programming language, you have to be able to like know how to declare variables. You have to know how to do loops. You have to do if conditions. Um, you have to be able to create data structures or objects. And once you know those just handful of core concepts, applying it to each language is just a matter of syntax. It's really not that big of a deal. So if you can do that with JavaScript today, then doing that in Salesforce is no big deal and it'll be super easy transition. But if you've never programmed it before and your brain just doesn't work in code, then I think it can be a very difficult challenge. And I think that's why actually why Salesforce is so cool, because admins can add all this functionality without having to have this developer background. So I think you get people on the platform as admins that aren't like so technical. So it creates a really good community of people. Uh, you watched my video yesterday telling how you learned Salesforce for Trailhead. On the comment, you also shared a trail mix to start at Trailhead. Need some advice because about Trailhead. Uh, yeah, so there's a trail mix, which is just a collection of like Trailhead badges that kind of walks you through the admin certification. And if you go on the Trailhead website, and it kind of walks you through like, hey, do you want to be an admin or a developer? And when you click on these things, it starts to gives you the the trails that are specific to that. So when you do admin, it'll ask you like, hey, do you want to do a certification? And then that brings open like all the different steps to become a certified. So it'll, for example, walk you through like looking at what the exam is. So then you mark that done. So okay, at least know what the exam is, um, and then you start learning all the different stuff. And I think when you get to the very bottom, it shows you like sample questions and things like that. So it's a very linear path. And if you just start from the top and just work your way down, by the end of it, you should be ready to take the exam. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I didn't have anything like that when I started. So the way that I learned was I went to a user group meeting and I said, "Hey, I'm EJ. I don't know anything about Salesforce, and I want to learn." And I remember Jenny was there, and she's since left the group and has gone to work for Salesforce.org. I haven't seen her in a long time, um, but she uh, kind of showed me the ropes and said, like, "Here's the cert. You should pick a day to take it. Start studying flashcards." And I don't know, she was just a big help for me, and I appreciated what she did. Hey, Ramu. Uh, you just joined 2 years experience in Java. Started learning Apex. Awesome. Where can I find real-time projects? Where can I find real-time projects to go through some code and practice on myself? Practice. Boy, if you want to practice, I would just say, you've obviously you have a dev org, right? So start using that dev org for everything that you do in your life. Like manage everything from that org, and and just do all those, like, so try to create just your own projects is what I would recommend to start with. But you can jump on Upwork, and Upwork, you should be able to find some projects that need Apex work. Um, Make sure Mason Frank knows about you, uh, and make sure your LinkedIn profile says that you're a Salesforce Apex developer, and also put the word admin too, because you'll get more recruiters contacting you. But answer the recruiters and just explain to them what your situation is, and they'll help find project work for you. They may be even be able to find like really like long-term remote jobs for you. What's the difference between Salesforce admin, and Salesforce business analyst? Well, a business analyst typically wouldn't do the work, and the admin would. So, a Salesforce analyst, a Salesforce BA, they have to have like a basic understanding of how Salesforce works, so that when they're so that they kind of know. I mean, they do help. They do an analysis of what the business needs and what functionality exists, and they'll help put together a gap analysis, and then they'll. So this isn't. So if a company is big enough to have both an analyst and an admin, so the analyst is going to work with all the business people and figure out what they need, and they'll hand it to an admin to actually do the work. In smaller companies, the admin and the analyst are actually the same person, and they just have to play multiple roles. They also may be the developer too, and the tester, um, and sometimes the manager. Uh, but yeah, so if there's two roles, that's kind of how they're split out. One just figures out what the work has to be, what needs to be done, and then the admin does it. Uh, Baba Tunde. I don't know. That's probably not how you say your name, but hi, welcome to the channel. You're just joining. Currently contemplating getting certified, an admin certified, but I'm also wondering how easy or hard it is to get a job upon certification, particularly with no experience. So if you think you can just get the certification, and then like if you live in, I don't know where that, I mean, your name doesn't sound like it's from the United States. I don't want to be racist in any way, but if you're in a place that doesn't have jobs, then I would say it would be very hard to find a job. But if you're living in an area where there's a lot of need for Salesforce admins, then it should be super easy to find a job. Um, so you have to be where the jobs are. And I think this is the same if you're in any part of the world. So if I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. Actually, I'm halfway in between two big cities. But if I was unwilling to drive and I was trying to get into Salesforce and I was just looking in my small town of North Prairie, I would never find a job. But so I'm at least willing to drive an hour to work every day. Now it's easy to find a job. Um, if I were willing to drive an hour and a half, it would be even easier to get a job. So the bigger I make my radius, the easier it is to get the job. But when you're starting out, I think being in person at a job is critical. And if you're able to move to where the job is, then it's even that much easier. Oh, Arizona, great. Arizona, there should be a lot. Well, Arizona's that's a big it's a big state. Phoenix, oh, tons of jobs in Phoenix. Be super easy. So I would say don't wait for you to get the certification. Um, you should start looking what jobs are out there now. Find the place that you want to work, and then see if they even require a certification, because a lot of jobs do not need them. A lot of I've seen some job postings that just say, "Hey, if you've heard of Salesforce and you're eager to learn, we'll hire you." So, Ram says, "What would you say are some differences in the work for an admin to work in a small company like a startup versus a mid-level or even a Fortune 100?" Boy, the Fortune, the work is very different between all three of those. So, the Fortune 100s are typically companies that are well established and have a lot of process in place. So, process is a big part of an admin. So, you may have to you you might get a requirements document if you're in a big company, and you might have to do an analysis and document your analysis, and you might have to propose a change to the system and document that, and then you might make that change in a sandbox, a dev sandbox. You may add the fields. Say if you just have to add a field, um, add a field, add it to a page layout, add it to profiles. You make that change, document it, test it, have other people test it, move that to a test org, have other people test it again, document the results of all the testing, and then you might move that to a stage org, and then you'll test again, and then you'll move it to production. And there's a lot of approvals that have to go through each step. So most of the work when you're working for these big companies is just dealing with their change management processes. Um, and so what is a 5 minute change to add a field may not get it to production for many weeks. It's very typical for it to take at least 2 weeks, more common for it to take over a month to get to production for one field change. Um, Smaller companies usually have less process. So a medium-sized company may say you could add a field to directly in production and you don't have to go through any process. But if you're going to add a validation rule, maybe that does require a process because that could potentially break things from working. So you may have some process they have to go through eventually. Maybe do it first in a sandbox, make sure it works, and if you're comfortable with it and you have your manager's approval, then you could add it to production, and that may only take a day. Um, and of course, when you're working for a very small company, there's like none of that process at all. And when someone says, "Hey, can you add a field to the opportunity?" then you just do it, and you try it out in prod, and maybe you create a couple opportunity records in prod, and when you see that it works, you delete the opportunity records, and it's no big deal. But like in a Fortune 100 company, you wouldn't even dare like create an opportunity in production because typically that will trigger off like all sorts of other processes. Like it'll create a record in some other system and it will generate emails to these other people. And um, so, yeah, I mean, being an admin in those three different size companies is usually mostly just related around process. Uh, you live in Jakarta. Maybe Upwork can help, right? Yeah, I mean, Jakarta, I don't even know where Jakarta is, but it sounds far away. It sounds like another planet. Isn't that the name of the planet that Ray was on? Jakarta? Uh, I don't know. Um, Upwork, I mean, so when I started my own consulting business, um, in order to become a partner with Salesforce, you have to have references from at least three customers. So what I did was I went out to Upwork and I bid very low on projects, and I got three customers, completed their projects very quickly, and they were very willing to be a reference for me. So I think just in a matter of a couple of weeks, I was able to get three references. Uh, so yeah, I mean, there's definitely work. to be done on Upwork. Um, there's on Upwork, you can do either fixed priced work or you can do hourly work. And the hourly work, it seemed like I had to like install software on my computer and it would like record my screen, and I didn't feel comfortable with that at all. So I never tried to do hourly work on Upwork before. I only did fixed price projects. Oh, it's in Indonesia. That's cool. I've never been there. It sounds like it would be really good food over there. What are some soft skills admins should have? Admins really need to be people, have good people skills. Um, what are some soft skills? You have to have the soft skills. I I guess I never thought of like what does it really mean to have soft skills, right? So you have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to empathize with them. So when they say they're having problems, you can't just say like, "That's your fault." You have to understand their pain and empathize with their pain, and you have to want to relieve them of their pain. So you have to understand what's causing it so that you can make suggestions to fix it. Um, but yeah, getting soft skills, I think also depends on. Does it depend on the size of the company? I don't know. I think the smaller the company, the more interaction you have with other people in the business. When you get these big companies, a lot of times you're just so isolated to your team that you might not even need soft skills at all because you're just given a document that tells you what to do, and you don't need soft skills. But if you're going to be a consultant, yeah, you have to have soft skills because you're walking into new companies every 3 months. So you have to be good at making friends, uh, building allies. Um, you have to learn not to criticize. Uh, obviously, you need to have good communication. Oh, good. Lots of questions. Two more here. What is the best platform to prepare for the certification exam? I really don't know all of the platforms. I can tell you I've used Focus on Force and I've used Trailhead. Um, Trailhead keeps getting better and better. Um, Focus on Force, I think, is good for I think it does a better job at prepping you because um, it gives you like examples of like similar types of questions that are equally challenging, but it also gives you like the reason of why one answer is wrong and why one answer is right. So I find that very helpful. Salesforce also sells their own sample exams that I've never seen before, so I don't really know if those are good or bad. I've heard that Mike Wheeler's content is very good, but I haven't used it. I think I actually have paid for it, but I haven't watched it. Like I think I got some like good deal on Udemy for it, but I haven't used it. The other question, I know it depends on other factors, but how much time I can invest in studying daily, but just your perspective. How long do you think it would ideally take up to prep for the exam? I think when a person gets hired at Salesforce, like as a salesperson, I think they're expected to pass the exam within like the first 2 weeks. So 80 hours of prep time. So I guess so. Yeah, I would just say 80, at least 80 hours of prep time. So if you only have 1 hour a day to spend, it's going to take you at least 80 days. Do you suggest us any best practice to follow while learning Lightning? Be very good at making bulk safe triggers. Bulk safe triggers are something that you don't do in any other, well, I haven't done in any other system. Um, be able to write bulk safe triggers, be able to write good unit tests. I think that's really you need to know for learning Apex. Always, always be testing and always be bulk safe. And try not to use Apex if you don't need to. Use Process Builder and flows. I've seen a lot of interesting Apex code. The best Apex code is this one that we didn't have to write. Regarding admins, do you see a time when there will be more supply admins than demand? Do you think the market looks right now? I think at some point, I would think the balance is going to be better. And I think what it's going to take is for once the colleges, once the universities start teaching this in school, I think that's when things are going to even out. So I think right now, a lot of students don't even know about Salesforce when they're going to university. So once they start teaching in the university, then I think everything's going to balance out. And I think that's going to start happening soon. So probably, but it's going to take time. I think we're probably good for the next 10 years. 10 years is the amount of time that a person says when something's going to take a long time and they don't want to be accountable for being wrong. So it's a long enough time for you to forget that I've said it's going to be 10 years. So watch for that for other things. People will always say we'll have flying cars in 10 years. It feels like it's soon, but it's really far away and you'll forget all about it. What do I think the market looks like right now? Right now, there's more jobs than there are people to do the work. But let me phrase it this way, though. The jobs and the people are not in the same location as the jobs. And the way people want to do the work remotely, but it's really hard to do that first job remotely. So I think if we had a way to move the people closer to the jobs or move the jobs closer to the people, then I think we have the right amount of people. I think they're just in the wrong spot. That's what I think. Talk about location related to remote working and digital nomad lifestyle. Is it possible as a Salesforce admin they can work from Bali, let's say? I mean, I don't think the problem is the distance when you come into that situation. I think the problem is the language and the expectations of what the person's going to do. Because when you have an admin, depending on the size of the company, I mean, a lot of times you really need to have them interact with other people. And it's when you have a person that's from another country, I think just those personal communications are very difficult. The time zone is also a problem. I suppose you could call that distance, but it's time and distance. Space and time, isn't that? They're related, right? I'm kind of living the nomad lifestyle. I'm at home right now, but I really don't like working from home. I usually work from a coffee shop or a hotel lobby, or I work out of my car a lot. So I'll sit in a parking lot of some place and just work from my car. So I'm in. I think for the last couple of years, 2, 3 years now, I've been working remotely, and you that's fine once you have experience and you have a way to have people trust you. If you have experience and you have like a good way to verify that you're a real person and not a internet scammer, then it can work. But really, what happens is that, I mean, a company, if they had a choice, they would pay for someone to be on site. But what happens is I will tell them, yeah, I'll go on site, but you're going to have to pay me um, $125 an hour, and you're going to have to pay for me to travel to be on site. So that might um, that might add another $25 an hour just for them to pay for the airline tickets and the hotels. So they're really paying closer to like 150 an hour total. Or I tell them we could do that, or I could just work remotely, and you don't have, and I mean I'll do it for $100 an hour. Um, so I do that because there's a lot of people that will work remotely. So um, they may be able to find somebody for even less than $100 an hour. Maybe they'll find someone that'll do it for 80 or 50. Probably someone in another country can afford to do it a lot less than I can do it for. Um, but what I look at is that usually a company is willing to pay around 125 to 150 to have somebody on site. Usually it's about 125 to be on site. 125 an hour, by the way, is what I'm saying. Um, so if I can find a job in Milwaukee or Madison for 125 an hour and I have to be on site, then I'll do that in another. It doesn't really matter to me where that is. So if it's going to be in another state, I'll still do that same rate, but you have to cover the travel expense. Um, so that's just kind of the way that the money works on it. Uh, but being remote is a lot harder to get work done than it is to be on site. So I can get things done a lot faster if I'm just sitting next to the person, um, as opposed to trying to do a Skype call. I think a company gets more value for someone being on site. So I think paying the higher dollar rate is definitely justified. I'm also a big believer in maybe only a 4 hour workday. I think so. I've worked on projects where I only was on site for 4 hours a day, and I was able to get, I think, the same amount of work done in those 4 hours than I did on projects where I was there for 8 hours a day. And typically that was because when I knew I was only there for 4 hours, I was hyper focused on getting done what I needed to get done. And and I think too the customer was hyper focused on making sure that I had what I needed to get done because I was only there for 4 hours that day. And on other projects, when you're there for the whole day, there seems to be a less urgency um, on both parts because you're just, you walk in and you have a cup of coffee and you kind of take your time about it. You wait for other people to come in and you just kind of get stuff done as, I don't know, it's a more relaxed pace on an 8 hour day. 4 hour days, I think, are better. I would rather work two projects where I'm at one company in the morning for 4 hours and then another company in the afternoon for 4 hours than just be at one place for 4 hours for 8 hours. Are there certain states you've noticed have more Salesforce opportunities? Yeah, I mean the states where the big companies are at, any place where there's so in the United States, I mean there's like so I learned this when I was selling stuff on eBay. I would have like clearly a lot of orders shipping to California, Florida, New York. Those are like the bulk of where the orders go to because that's just where like all the people are. So yeah, there's not a lot of jobs in like I've never seen a job in Montana, for example, or North Dakota. Never seen a job there. But lots of jobs in California, Florida, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, St. Louis, so Missouri. Um, yeah. If someone's an independent admin consultant, how many admin projects do you think you can juggle at one time? Me personally, I like to juggle 5 projects at a time. Uh, but it depends on the size of the project. So, kind of like what I was saying, where when you're there for 8 hours a day, there's like less urgency. So, when you're working smaller project, so projects usually have delays, and if you could be working on another project while this other project is on hold, like because you're waiting for someone to answer a question, you can usually, yeah, it's just more efficient. I don't know why 5 seems to work for me, but maybe it has something to do with like 5 days of the week, and I can schedule like meetings. Like each project could have a significant touch base on each day of the week. Um, but once I get more than 5 projects, then it starts to be too much for me. What does the consultant fee structure look like? So it depends on how you do it. You can do fixed priced or you can do hourly. Uh, so what I typically do is, um, well, I guess consulting can be more too because it's if it's staff aug versus a specialty, um, that can be different too. But so for if I just look at staff aug for consulting for Salesforce work, usually the going rates are between $80 and $100 an hour for a developer to be remote. For on-site, it's more like 125 to 150 uh, to be on-site for a developer. Um, and those are like hourly rates with like a 3-month contract minimum. But if you're doing more project-based work, like let's say you want to do someone just purchased Salesforce Professional Edition with 5 user license and wants to get set up. That might cost. So what you try to do is think about how much the customer is paying for Salesforce. Um, so I guess instead of professional edition, let's use enterprise because usually those will be larger dollar amounts. So if uh, the list price I think is like a 150, $150 per user per month. But when you buy a lot of licenses, you can negotiate better price with Salesforce. Maybe you'll get it for $1,000 per user per year. And let's say you have 20 users. So the customer is going to spend 20, they're going to get an invoice from Salesforce for $20,000 to enable their account for the first year. And when you do an implementation, you try not to have your implementation fee be more than what but more than what their licensing fee is. So your quote to do the implementation should be under $20,000. So that's just one example. So but you can apply that to any of the licensing. So if it's a smaller company, they're just buying professional edition, just ask them how many users that they have and what edition they have. Try to get a feel for how much they're spending every year on Salesforce, and then try not to go bigger than that when you quote them a fixed bid price. But if you're saying you're going to be an independent admin consultant, to me that sounds like you want to do 1099 staff aug contract work, like maybe a 3-month contract. Um, Maybe they'll, if they pay you as a 1099, then you're just going to give them like your social security number and they're going to pay you 1099 through their payroll system. So they may just direct deposit an hourly. Say you work 40 out, you give them they fill out a timesheet for 40 hours that week. Then they'll add that into the payroll system, and then the week after you'll get deposited the money into your checking account. But if you're going to operate as a company, like a corp to corp, then maybe you don't fill out a timesheet and instead you send them an invoice. And then the terms of the invoice may be net 30. So when you give them you work a week, you give them an invoice, and then maybe 30 days later they'll send you a check, and then you deposit the check into your account. But those terms are all negotiable. So the longer the net, if it's a net 30, I'll use a higher bill rate than if it's a net 7. So if they're going to pay me quickly, then I'll give them a better bill rate. And if the contract is longer, I usually give them a lower bill rate. But if they only want to do like a 1-month contract, then I give them a higher bill rate because I need to budget. It takes time and money to find other contract positions, and there may be gaps between contracts, so you have to save money and budget for that stuff. Have I ever considered creating an admin training course? I have considered that, and I think I concluded that Trailhead is way better than I could ever do, and we have very talented trainers like Mike Wheeler out there. They're doing a great job, and I don't want to waste. I see it as wasting time because someone's already done it. So it's like trying to solve a problem that's already been solved. I don't see anyone else on YouTube answering questions on how people can get into Salesforce, and that's why I'm doing this. What's Salesforce? I don't know. What is this Salesforce? It's a it's a bit of a cult, I would say. Once you're in, I don't know if you can get out or not, but they at a lot of the events they give you a lot of alcohol, and their parties are really fun. Tony Macaroni, thanks for joining. Yeah, so the way that I'm trying to help people too is what my end goal is. I'd be awesome if I could accomplish this, but I'd like to be a place where people can go to get their first job in Salesforce and then get good experience and then move on to something else. I think it'd be cool if people could say, yeah, I know I got my start in Salesforce from DoWow, and you might want to check them out too. I want to be like the incubator of new Salesforce places. Like, how everyone's like, people say like half the population has their first job at McDonald's. I'd love to be like, I got my first job at DoWow. How do you earn a living? I have customers that pay me money to do Salesforce development and administration. So I have a consulting business. It's very small. I have 2 employees. One of them is myself, and another one is located in a city about an hour away from here. My business is very new. I started this in August of last year, of 2019. If you're an admin, how would you easily explain what your job is so someone can easily understand? That's actually a like one of those questions that they have you answer at a Salesforce user group meeting. We did that one time. Uh, like, what's your elevator pitch meeting or message? I always just tell people that I help companies set up Salesforce. It's just a website. People buy a Salesforce account, and I just help them set it up. It's not a big deal. You really don't know how much you are helping us. Thanks a lot for all the valuable information. Well, great. I'm happy to help, and you're welcome. Tony Macaroni, why don't you hire me? Well, right now, there's probably two reasons. If you live in Wisconsin, then I could potentially hire you. But right now, I already have an employee that's helping me out, and I don't have enough project work to bring on a third person. So I have the ability to grow with staff aug work if I wanted to, but and I could make a lot of money doing that. But I my what I'm trying to do though is help new people get into Salesforce, and it you can't take someone that doesn't have experience in Salesforce yet and put and place them at a company in a staff aug situation. The staff aug only works with people that already have experience. So I use project work as a way to let new people practice getting to know Salesforce. So I can't bring on more employees until I bring in more project work. And bringing in more project work is a lot harder to do than bringing in staff aug work. So to answer the question, it's because I'm not a good enough salesperson. If I were a better salesperson, then I would have more projects and I could hire you. And I could figure out how to hire people outside of Wisconsin. And I just realized it is 10 o'clock here and I need to head out. I thought I was going to sign off at like 8 o'clock and somehow this has gone way longer than I planned. Um, Thank you everyone for joining the live stream. And I would love to do this again next week. And I know how to do sales. Awesome. That's what I need is a good salesperson. What specific tasks would you suggest every admin needs to learn to be a great admin? I mean, really, you just have to learn. You have to know how to learn, really. So if you read all the release notes and keep up on all the new features that are being added, and you understand those new features, and then start to learn all the existing features, then you'll be awesome. So just get to know all the features that are in the tool. That's really all you need. It's not that big of a deal. You're welcome, Ramu. Thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. If you had a question and didn't get a chance to ask, you can just shoot me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to send you a message. Otherwise, we can chat again next week. Hey, Taigo. I'll have to learn how to pronounce your name. Thanks for joining. You won an award as a top salesman from several reputable companies. Awesome. Tony, if if you're already a good salesperson, you don't need me. What you do is go and sell the project. And then what you do is you contact Mason Frank and tell them that you need an admin or a developer for a couple of weeks and then have them do the project. Um, if you're a good salesperson, it's really all you need in life. I mean, you can always have other people do the work. Getting the project is the hard part. So I wish I was you. I wish I was a good salesperson. My LinkedIn, just search, I'm sorry, just search for my, I know my name's probably not even on here. So, I'll type my name in the chat. My name's EJ Bantz. Oh my God, I can't even type. So EJ Bantz, if you search for me on LinkedIn, I'll probably accept your connection in the morning. All right, I apologize for the yawning. Have a good night, everyone, or a good day if you're in a place where it's sunny and bright. It's cold and snowy in Wisconsin, 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, Tony, I can help coach you to find the work or to find people to do the work. Mason Frank is the best place to go, I think. All right, bye everyone.